Welcome to the CX Roundtable. I am Sarah Caminiti. This is a really cool moment for us at the CX Roundtable because this is our first official series, and it's going to be a series on WFM or workforce management. I don't know very much about this at all because this isn't something that when you're scaling teams from scratch, you give that much thought to. But the more I learn about it, the more I think I probably should be giving it more thought. And understanding all of the different spaces that CX exists within an organization, regardless of size, is the point of this entire roundtable project. It's uncovering little hidden spaces that, depending on what industry you're in, you may not know about or may know about, but feel really nervous to ask questions about because you feel like you should know what it is. And so this is kind of my chance to learn from experts and meet great people. This episode is cool because it is two people that know each other very, very well. Two people that welcomed me into a space a few weeks ago. We met for the first time, and I immediately knew we were all kindred spirits. They were kind enough to gift me with their time today to talk about this and let me pick their brain. Let me get this started here. I'm going to pass this over to Arlyne, who is going to give us a chance to get to know her.
Hello, everybody. My name is Arlyne. I'm based in Panama. I'm a WFM professional with 8 years plus of experience. I'm passionate about growth and development, which is sometimes kind of weird on the WFM space regarding the growth on the roles that we have, but we're going to dig on that a little bit later.
Awesome. Yes, I'm so happy that you're here. And what you just said is something that I'm really excited to get into because I do feel like growth and managing this space, you have to know what you're doing or at least be intentional with it so you can get set up for success. Cracks start to emerge and then you start to see other areas of focus and so I'm just super pumped to dive into it. And then we also have my boat ride partner extraordinaire, Dan. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, happy to be here, y'all. Dan Smitley. I am the founder and principal consultant for 23 Consulting. It's a WFM focused consulting organization trying to help organizations just elevate what the practice is. In previous roles, I've been a director of workforce management. I've been around in the contact center space for over 20 years now, and almost all of that inside of workforce management. It wasn't until like halfway through my career that I realized, oh, this is a thing. Oh, there's a whole system and there's a whole society and there's a whole thing here. So happy to share that knowledge so maybe other people get up to speed a little bit faster than I did.
I feel that in my bones. I feel like there's been so many times, especially when you're in the weeds with things, that you don't lift up your head and look around at the community and see how other people are doing it and how similar it is to what you're doing. I mean, when I started in startups, I was a part of all of these little Slack communities, but never really went there because you have to be vulnerable to ask for help and to receive help and to even think about what you're doing in a way that's like, it's just me that's dealing with all of this stuff. It's like, but it's not. And so once you start to ask questions and start to give yourself permission to breathe and to make that space to explore in a community setting, it is wild how often you realize, oh, wait a second, this thing that like I've built my entire career on, there's actually like an entire industry related to this that I just thought that I was making this up as I went along. And there's something so validating in that and freeing in that because now you have tools. Now you have books, now you have resources, now you have people that you can lean on. I think the most important question to get this thing going is, what is WFM and how does it work? I'm going to start with you, Dan, to answer that question.
I've been doing this for 18 years. My wife still isn't quite sure what I do. I think that is just the curse of workforce management. The simplest way to think about it is that we are the team that's tasked with understanding the customer interaction demand and matching it against the frontline, we'll call them agents, schedules to that demand. And then the management of those two variables when we get it wrong, because we're going to get it wrong. So we're trying to figure out When are people interacting with us? What kind of resources do we need to interact with them? And then how do we adjust intraday to when we get it wrong?
Hmm. That sounds like a very data heavy type of space with you have to afford yourself the opportunity to fail too, which must be a scary mindset to get yourself in, but you're definitely not going to get it right the first time. And you have to learn from each data point of when things kind of dip or when it like lands so perfectly. So you can see, was this just a fluke or is this something reproducible? Arlyne, do you have anything that you'd like to share about what this industry is?
Well, it can be applicable to many verticals, like from healthcare, financial. If you think about it, we basically plan who works what shift or when, depending on the work that is available. And based on real time, we need to be able to shift, trying to go back to the plan, or if the plan was not accurate as it was supposed to be, then how we can uh, redirect this to be a success. A success.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like that you brought up the different industries too, because I think that that's a really important thing to acknowledge. Dan, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say we are going to obviously talk about CX, but I think what I've seen from workforce management is the really mature organizations, the really mature WFM teams actually will shift their definition of customer. So I know in this context, what we're talking about is we're thinking of external customers. But internally, right, we are needing different teams to give us content to do our work. Accounting is waiting for sales to produce something, product is waiting for, right? There's all these internal teams. That's work that has to be done. And there's some sort of guessing that's happening as to how much work is it and how many people do I need to do the work. Workforce management is front office and back office. Anywhere there is work to be done, a guess to be made at how much work, and then another guess as to how many people do we need to do that work. That's us. That's workforce management.
Oh, like that makes me think a lot about the struggle to get headcount, the struggle to have the staffing that you need. And I'm curious when it comes to advocating for headcount and trying to articulate it to the powers that be that are going to okay it, is WFM usually the place that approves headcount, or are you kind of like in between? Like what role do you play in getting people what they need?
Well, I believe it depends. Talking from the BPO experience, you can have some clients that will approve your headcount, and you need to go back to them and say what will be their service levels, like what you can achieve with that pool of people that you are approving me. And as well, you can calculate how many people do you need and take that back to the client, have a conversation why you need 100 people and not 20 to have the job done, and like in a sort of way have that negotiation to get that approved. So from a BPO standpoint, it depends a lot.
That's like an intense role to be that negotiator. I mean, even like for someone that works in small companies where everybody knows everybody, having those sorts of conversations are so layered. And and it doesn't matter, you know, like everyone's kind of speaking their own language and they have their own goal at the end of it. And that must be such a an extraordinary opportunity to have language at your disposal that you can use to connect with all these different spaces and build what needs to be built because you are put here in this role within this company to show what is needed in order for things to run at the level that they need to be run. Is that an accurate understanding, Dan?
I think it can be. So what you're describing there is in a team that is skilled in translation, skilled in kind of holding the middle space amongst a lot of teams. And I would say the good WFM teams can do that. Yes, I think there is a lot of WFM teams that will simply drop off a spreadsheet and go the other direction, right? And so I think Arlyne was spot on saying it depends a lot of by client, by the sector, by whatever. Um, some organizations might have WFM teams that simply say you need 20 people, goodbye. And people are, well, why? How? What happens if we get like 18 versus 25? Can we have a discussion? They're like, no, it's 20. But I think the good WFM, yes, they sit in that middle space and they get really curious about why is marketing want to do what they're doing? When are they going to be dropping their campaigns? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And how can my team support marketing? What does it look like for WFM to support operations? What does it look, and then to be able to try to play that translator, to be able to say, I don't think we can do what marketing wants because operations has this other thing, but a compromise might look like X, Y, or Z. And it's the ability to, again, you said it's very data driven. Absolutely. And a lot of that data isn't in spreadsheets. A lot of that data is personalities, it's relationships, it's their focus, it's their directions. And the more we can get that data as well, the better we can play that middle person translator, the better I think we can help drive schedules and volume alignment.
Just it's like to have this role where your skill set is so much in negotiation. That was so unexpected. That's not what I expected to have at the root. And let such a very specific type of person to be able to do this well and to thrive in it and to empower people to advocate for their needs as well because you're working in tandem with them. You are a partner to them. So it's like, okay, you've got this team that's struggling. Now you work with the WFM team to kind of understand why this is happening and how can we leverage that data to get you where you need to be. And so that's really cool. And I think that, I mean, I could go down 75 rabbit holes about this, but let's pause for a second and go back to some foundations here. Arlyne, when you strip all of this down, how would you explain things like forecasting, scheduling, and RTA? I don't even know what RTA is in a way that non WFM leaders will finally start to understand.
So I will go with an example, like on real life, like if you go to the drive-through, like we calculate the persons that needs to be there on shift to support your order and get your hamburger within 1 minute. That's what we do. Or if you are on a bank doing the line to get support, how many people do we need there to you don't have to wait like 30 minutes in line to get some information about your account, something like that. That's how I try to explain it on real life because if I'll say
Mm-hmm.
something like, oh, we use Erlang or we use this calculation or like as soon as I say like I work in a contact center, they say, oh, you take calls. So try
Yeah.
to come with a simple but powerful scenario that I can explain to people so they understand what I do.
No, I think that that's super smart because you're right. And what you just said about contact centers, it's funny. I've been thinking a lot about contact centers lately and how interesting of an environment it is. And when you really strip it back, it's like this is an entire organization whose purpose is to help customers and to service these customers. Like all of these different roles are all here for the same purpose. You've got these agents that are talking to customers. How can you best facilitate this in a way that makes sense to the agents, to the companies, to the customers? So, just so that I kind of understand, forecasting is planning for the future. So, you know, holidays are coming and you know that this was the volume last holiday season. Therefore, you need to increase for this period of time, or know that on Mondays at 2 o'clock, there's always a spike. And so we need to add extra people there during this time to support that workload. But then scheduling is the actual act of taking the people that you have that are trained and are actively working at a call center, for example, and scheduling what their hours are going to be, when what their shifts are going to be. And then there's the other piece that I still have no clue of, the RTA. Dan, did I get that first chunk right? And can you help me with Look at that, 15 minutes in. That's because you guys are so good at what you do.
It was spot on. I would say the forecasting can be as simple or as granular as you want it to be. So maybe we're simply saying how many calls come in on a Tuesday versus a Wednesday. I think that's an approach. Could be how many calls are we expecting or tickets are we expecting in May versus June, right? It can be this nice high level. Maybe we're thinking about staffing models, but it can get granular in trying to figure out, well, how many calls and what's the average handle time going to be, and how much shrinkage might we have? So that's a term that we're going to use quite a bit of, basically how much extra staff are we going to lose because of training or because of break time or because of call outs and absenteeism. So there's these, this is the work, this is how many people we think we need to do the work. And then this is actually how many people we need to schedule because we know we're going to lose for a variety of reasons. So spot on. RTA, real time adherence, or real time analytics, or real time adherence, is around the management of the agents from a schedule and a volume forecast. So, again, different teams, different environments are going to look at this differently. People are going to have RTA people focused on downtime. This particular client's pipe is broken, send out an alarm. So before IT even knows about it, RTA is already watching the state of all of the agents. They see everyone go off. They know within seconds they'll see all of the agents are no longer logged in. We see the volume as it's coming in real time. We're seeing it and all the calls just drop. We see it before IT will likely see it. RTA is monitoring what are the agents currently doing this very second, how many calls are currently in, and then how does that compare to our understanding of what should be happening right now? So is volume coming in higher or lower than we were expecting? Are agents logged in appropriately? Are they in an after call work inappropriately? Are they on break inappropriately? What's going on and how do we need to manage this moment, this very second? And how do we need to adjust for the next minute, for the next hour, for whatever that is intraday? RTA is only looking at today right now.
Oh, okay. And so then that complexity and that responsibility is great in order for an organization to actually function properly. But how do you balance that historical data with those unpredictable variables like you were just describing?
I don't think balance is the right word. I think it's probably how do you respond, right? And
Okay.
because I don't think there is a balance of like, well, we have historical and we have real time. I
Hmm.
think it's we have historical, we make our predictions, and then we've got contingency plans, or we have standard operating procedures, or we've got communication paths that we take that says when variability breaks, right? When we go off path, when we go off course, what do we do? Well, when this goes, you contact IT. When this agent's not doing what they need to be doing, you contact the supervisor. When the volume is blowing up, as long as it's within 6%, you do nothing. At 7%, you take this first step. At 13% over forecast, you take these steps. So you build out all of these contingency plans that say, this is how we respond. I think in your environment, though, Sarah, kind of growing up in startups, you don't have those standard operating procedures.
Right.
The variability is every day because we
Yeah.
don't have historical patterns. We don't know. And that's where I would say WFM done well is just about good communication.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit around the negotiation piece, and I think that's good communication. Real time monitoring is around good communication. Did we expect 3 times the volume that we normally do? Everyone's on training. Did we expect to do that? And maybe we didn't have a plan, but being able to reach out to hear, yeah, we knew that was going to happen. Sorry, we didn't communicate with you. Here's when the people will be back on the phones. It's how you respond and do you have the communication paths to be able to go to the right teams, whether it's proactive or reactively. Arlyne, I'm curious if you see it a little bit differently. Again, the kind of is it about balancing historic and that unpredictableness, or is it something different?
Um, I think there could be like some scenarios, worst case, the ideal one, and it's how we react to them. I'm sorry, I was too inspired with how you describe the real-time analysts. Like for me, they are the heroes during like the real time because yes, we can forecast, we can do the scheduling, but they are the ones in charge of the plan to see if that's going as we plan or not, and how they come creative enough to shift it back to the original plan. Like if I'm receiving more transactions than I was expecting, I ask the quality analyst if they are trained on this line of business and if they can help me to try to mitigate the calls or the chats that I have on queue. They come with this type of ideas as well. And for me is like, yes, they will have some standard or SOPs or some guidance, but as well, like from their side is how they come creative and propose something different, or they go back and circle back to the forecasting and scheduling team like, hey, do you know that every single Monday I'm struggling, can you help me with this? Like have that capacity to speak up, right? It's not easy, like to go back to your own team, circle back and say, I'm noticing this. I'm curious if we can add two people more into this shift because of this and that. Like for me, the real time, definitely they are heroes and they should be able to speak up. And that I believe that translate as well into Dan's recently article about psychological safety.
1000%. I think it's making that space. It's providing that foundation of everyone is here to do their job. And we have to trust that when they bring something to our attention, it's because they are skilled in what they do and they know that this is something that requires our attention. I think something that keeps popping up in my head, I would love to know your perspective, especially from the BPO space, like leading teams. Usually the team lead, even when I've led teams that are in call center-esque like environments, like you've got the team lead and that's the one that is monitoring all of these things. That's the one that's kind of like keeping an eye on the agent's behaviors, their metrics, like all of those bits and pieces, having the tech stack to be able to have an eye on everything that's going on. But it sounds like a properly staffed and trained WFM team kind of takes over some of that role. And so, how do these two spaces work in tandem together?
With a lot of communication and understanding for me is that because if WFM is talking about just metrics like how does that translate into a supervisor or a team lead or a coach, how I make this supervisor understand what I need and why I need that right away is not beneficial to me if I'm asking you that I need the agents back on the phones, but I'm not explaining you that I need them right now. Like as well, like that clarity on when I need them and why I need them. Like I need them now because I'm having 20% over of volume. That's why I need them back. So they can understand me and not see me like I'm mandating that just put it back or not explaining why. Um, for me is that, and it has to be a lot of respect because um, the RTA, for example, in this scenario, they can cross that fine line of talking to the agents or stuff like that because they will feel that we are surpassing our scope of work, to call it in a sort of way. It's more likely like suggesting as well to the supervisor to check on the agents if we are noticing something weird or this agent is not closing the chats on time or this agent is spending much of the time on after call work if something's happening. Like it depends a lot how the communication is between these two parties.
Makes a lot of sense. Dan, do you have anything from your experience about that?
Yeah, so I think what you're discussing here is how does WFM interact with operations, and then what
Yeah,
pieces maybe do they pull off of operations? And I think in a startup environment, you don't need WFM
no.
doing all of it. You don't and you don't need them doing forecasting, scheduling, and RTA. WFM could benefit a startup that's scaling by only taking one or two of those and just pulling it off of the operations plate. The way that I've tried to implement WFM in the past for startups is we would prefer operations to be doing the people oriented coaching, supervising, connecting. And not to say that WFM isn't people centered, but let's let supervisors and team leads handhold and coach to performance, and let us spend the deep dive into the forecast that operations you just don't have the time, right? You don't need to be monitoring if someone's in ACW or Ox. We'll give you a report, you can see what's happening and you can follow up, or if something significant's happening, I'll flag you and you can talk to Bob about his auxiliary code time going too long. It's really about establishing what are the pain points that we're experiencing operations, and how could a WFM team support that and pulling off of that pain point, because we don't have time to do the forecasting and then we're flying blind because schedules were static and they've been that way for the past 2 years, and we think we can do something better but we don't know what that can look like, or we're spending way too much time just staring at screens and not enough time talking to people, and WFM can help there as well.
It's such an interesting role in just the intentionality behind it, of like understanding what can happen if you give these supervisors the chance to actually just like devote their time to coaching, to being there with their team, being present, answering questions, instead of what you see often where folks are in their office, they're looking at their dashboards, they're consumed with the data, and that disconnect starts to really start to grow and grow and grow. But if you have a partnership with the WFM space, then you can give them that space to do what they were hired to do, which is lift up their team and get them to get the results that they need. And I'm curious to know from both of you, but I'll start with you, Dan, in terms of tooling and tech, because obviously, I mean, not obviously, I hope that this is not all some crazy Excel spreadsheet equation situation in nearly 2026. Like, it's how scrappy are you guys with what you need in order to do all of this incredibly complex work?
You would be surprised by how many spreadsheets are even in incredibly mature organizations. One of the points that's most frustrating to me is someone will go out and buy a WFM software, then it does all of the bells and whistles. It's highly sophisticated, and they still will say, it doesn't know our volume like we know our volume. We're going to do the forecasting in our spreadsheets and then import those into the spreadsheet. Or we'll let it forecast, but schedules, they're static. I mean, our agents can't change their schedules ever. We are only ever going to have this, and it you'd be surprised. So tooling, yes, there are WFM tools out there. There are some that are small and scrappy and cheap and will simply get you from 0 to 1. There are some that, unless you're 10,000 seats, they're going to look the other way because they're like, we don't care about, we're the big fish here. Yeah. I think we all probably, I mean, a few of the WFM professionals and know exactly which organizations I'm talking about with that. But there is tools out there and they can go the full spectrum. But yes, at the core, kind of what we always do, spreadsheet work. And then if you are in a startup, you don't got to go buy anything. You can online just search up call center calculator, Erlang calculator. There is multiple free ones out there just simply to get you started, and they'll ask you to put in a few variables, and it will say you need 10 people, and you can just run with that. There are free tools out there, and there's Excel spreadsheets out there. There are other tools that actually are just little Excel spreadsheet plugins that simply say, cool, you got Excel, we'll add in a little bit of functionality and take you a little bit up. So it's a ton of options, but genuinely start with Excel and go as far as you can with that, because you'd be surprised by how far you can go.
Oh, that's really interesting. What about you, Arlyne? Is it the same sort of scenario where you guys are Excel masters?
Yes, you will have like different files for different things, like a separate schedule file, a separate one for the forecast, stuff like that. And when you decide to have a WFM system, then coming from Excel files, you could experience as well some resistance because everybody's used to the Excel spreadsheets. Like I used to receive my schedules on an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, but now you have it available on the system. No, but I don't want to use your system. I want my Excel spreadsheet back. So you can face as well that scenario that you are spending, a lot of money on this WFM tool, but people want whatever you had on the Excel prior, the getting the software into the software. Or they want whatever is on the software that they can access to that still in Excel. So it's a very complicated situation.
Change is hard, and everyone reacts to change differently. That is a mantra that I say to myself all the time whenever I'm in those very similar situations. Here just for a quick second and before I've got a couple of other pivots to throw your way, but because I don't know really the types of organizations that you both have really thrived in. How is it when you're working with an organization, you're working with the WFM space, and you had mentioned all these different roles that exist within this function? I'm guessing you usually just start with one person that's doing it all, and then you get to a point where you need to expand. What are the triggers, Dan, in your career that you've seen to get to that point of, I need to add someone else, and what kind of a someone else do you add?
So, if we go back to kind of the working definition of what workforce management is, around trying to forecast out your workload to be able to assume how many resources you need and what the schedules need to look like. To your question, you workforce the workforce management team, right? If we're going to
Yeah,
advocate for
that's for
headcount,
sure.
we have to be able to say, well, why do you need two people? Well, I need two people because my workload is X and maybe it's only 60 hours and I'm killing myself and I don't have a full time. So I then say, okay, I want a full time person, but I'm going to take another 20 hours off of my operations team because we weren't doing RTA. Now we will, or we weren't doing forecasting and now we will. So the next step is really dependent upon the organization. It depends upon what that first WFM person is doing, how they're already supporting operations, and then how else can they support operations. The functionality doesn't change. Forecasting, scheduling, RTA. It's always those three pieces. It's just how can we increase that to add more value to operations, and then we make the case. This is how many units of work I'm doing, how many forecasts I'm creating, how many schedules I'm creating, how often I'm looking at RTA. And the benefit of that is better alignment of resources or a faster response when volume is blowing up. So it always depends, but you workforce the workforce management team.
That's such a good point. I mean, this is what you're good at. This is what you are here to do, to advocate for all these other spaces. Why would you not be able to advocate for yourself? It's a good test of whether your system is working or not if you're able to get that across the finish line. Something that I keep thinking about in the back of my head, mostly because I used to work in call centers. That's where I started a lot of my CX career in different spaces. But if you are forecasting and scheduling, there are the human beings that are doing this work, and they have lives and they have things that they need to work around and an ideal schedule, I'm assuming, but that can't always be something that you're able to give to them because of the forecasting that you're doing to meet these needs. So, like, how do you even have these conversations? Like, is it with the supervisor? Is it, and then they pass it down? Like, how do you open the door of, okay, in 2 weeks, we are expecting X amount of volume. We weren't expecting it beforehand. So, like, it's kind of a last minute shift because we're noticing this trend and it's growing and we need to really grab the bull by its horns. Like, how do you even broach that? Because, I mean, is that just seems like a very difficult thing to have to navigate. And Arlyne, what's been your experience for broaching those sorts of conversations? Because I'm sure you have to all the time.
Yep. For me, it's like selling the vision to operations. Like if we are able to, for instance, there is a shift on the volume, there is a marketing campaign or something that will increase the volume. I need more hours than was anticipated. this is the amount of hours that I need. These are the slots where I need them. And if we are able to get that, the impact will be less, or we can have no impact. It depends. And then trying to sell that as a vision to operations so they have the conversation with the agents and convince them to work on the slots that I need. And if there is anything that I can do for them to help to get that sort of, I could add an additional break. There is something that could be done as motivate the agents or something different, how we can support that so they can have the agents. I'm not gonna work because already my shift is too long, and now you are adding me these 2 3 extra hours. Is I'm gonna be burnt out or something like that. So how me as WFN can say like, okay, I need you to work these 3 additional hours, but the exchange I could assign this break so you can breathe and keep going with the work. So yes.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That definitely makes a lot of sense. But what happens if you don't have the head count for it and you're noticing the spike? Like, Dan, what have you seen in these sort of staffing situations?
I think the key is to be as transparent as possible with the data that we have. So we're getting a spike, we can't get the head count. We don't simply say we're going to be short 10 people. You say the average wait time for our customers during this period will not be our standard or hopeful 20 seconds. It is going to be a minute and a half. And if everyone is comfortable with a minute and a half wait time, we don't need to take any action. We probably will see our abandons move from 2% to 6%. And if we're comfortable with our sales calls dropping at a 6% rate versus a 2%, we're fine, right? And okay, we're 10 short. If we can get two more people instead of it being 6% abandons, it's a 4% abandons, maybe we're comfortable with that. Like it goes back to that negotiating that you were referencing before. We have a perspective, but it's also about just having an open conversation. We're very data driven. We can tell you likely what's our best guess, what is going to happen. And if we can't get the head count, we prepare everyone. This is going to suck. We are going to come in way under what we typically do. And this is going to be the impact to our customers. The space between calls for all of our agents that are working is gone. And so all of those people are also going to be burnt out. We need to make sure that we're aware. We've been 10 short now for a week. All of our agents on average get 0.5 seconds to breathe between calls. What do we think that's going to do to our attrition, right? And it's to be able to have these open conversations. So instead of it simply saying we're 10 people short and we're the end, if we can humanize those numbers to some extent to be able to say this is the impact on our customers, this is the impact on our employees, it just helps everyone have an informed conversation. Even if we can't get the head counts, we at least are all on the same page that we're signing up for a hard day or a hard week. And we all know that it's important. So we're all going to use our influence and impact that we can to get the 10 head count. So it's not just WFM pushing for it. We all see why we need to go for it.
So you have to get everybody to agree to the consequences. And that's a really important piece of a lot of this. And I think people in CX, regardless of size of company, feel this all the time because it's so easy to say, do more, do more, do more, do more, do more. But you are able to say, if we do more, we will be looking at this increase in call out. We will be looking at this increase of attrition, and therefore we will need to have a ramp up time of X in order to get back to the same capacity and to then be able to say, is everybody okay with this wait time being this number? The agents don't have that stress of, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing enough. It's, you got to take care of you. You got to have that space. Like, we acknowledge that we're putting you in a really tricky situation right now. And we know that we're asking a lot of you, but there should be a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, this is not forever. We are working to try to solve this, but just in this very moment, things are going to suck. But it's not sucking because you're not doing a great job. It's sucking because there are these other things that exist that are it falls on your shoulders, unfortunately. And what an empowering type of conversation to be able to have so that trickles down, because like that's at the heart of it. It's that pressure to do the impossible that sits on a lot of these agents' shoulders.
For me, at least, that goes back to WFM supports operations. Maybe we're not the ones going and telling the agents you're doing everything you can. It's not you, it's this larger environment. Maybe we're not having those conversations, but because we've done the forecasting, because we've seen the math, we have been able to hand that over to operations who maybe has a better relationship with the agents, who understands each person. And so for this guy, I'm going to go and be like, dude, it's going to be rough. You're going to kill it. I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna increase your speed. You're just gonna crank through all of the calls. I'm like, this is your opportunity to shine. And then this person over here being like, I know it's gonna be overwhelming for you. You probably gonna need to take a couple extra breaths. And operations has those relationships to be able to customize it, but it's because we have equipped them with the data to be able to have those conversations. Um, Again, that's what we try and create the space to be able to have a more informed conversation around what do we think is going to happen, what do we need to do to make it happen well, and how are we going to adjust when we get it wrong.
And how lucky are these organizations to have folks like the two of you thinking about things in so many different layers and then be able to construct a story that hits where it needs to hit with the right people, and to have that be like a part of your like main focus of what your role is to tell these stories in ways that speak to the people that are receiving this data, because it can be really hard to be a leader and have to speak every single language of every single department to try to advocate for your team. To have this partnership with WFM to be able to leverage that data and build a story that gets you the support that you need, or the grace that you need, is pretty cool. And I keep thinking too about the math of it all, and I am just dying to know, Arlyne, how did you get into this industry?
I believe, like everybody else, I started taking calls, and then suddenly I saw the WFM team on a higher stage at the contact center, and I was wondering what those people are doing every single day. And I got the opportunity to get in, and I fell in love, honestly, because there is a lot that you can do with the data from a math perspective, but as well how much you can drive the well-being of the agents if you do the forecast and the scheduling right. Like for me is that maybe I have the impact directly into four people that report directly to me, but those four direct reports will have impact on, who knows, eight more people, and those eight into the agents and so on is so scalable. Like the way that WFM can influence on this industry, that is so inspiring.
Don't apologize. I mean, this is the ultimate ripple effect, and it's no wonder you were drawn to it, because you are somebody that wants to make a difference, and you saw a window that would allow you to make a difference in a way that aligns with who you are and can reach as many people as humanly possible. So, I mean, never apologize for that. That is so cool that you were able to do it, because it's true with any job too. You are in control of how you approach this work, and you are in control of what you want the impact to look like. And to be able to approach this work as, I'm doing this because I want to make things better and easier, aligned with my values as much as humanly possible. And this is a really fantastic way for me to do that. Not everybody does that. And that's what makes you special, Arlyne. I love how curious you are as well to understand the areas of a business so that you can better collaborate with them, and to take that time to build a relationship with Dan. I mean, you are mentor and mentee so that you can have that support to build your career in a way that you're not head down in the weeds the whole time. You actually are able to look up and see what's going on, and you're not alone. And then you're open to be on this call with me. And I think that that's just, it makes me excited for the future of this industry because of people like you that are looking at things less of a let's optimize everything and make everything more efficient than everything already is. Instead, it's there's a person on the other end, and I want to figure out how I can tell a story to support that person in the best way that I can. And so that's really, really wonderful. So thank you for being
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
And Dan,
Mhm.
you've been on this journey for a long time. What made you jump on this train and stay?
My wife got pregnant. That is literally the reason.
Really?
So it really is by me. Like my wife was pregnant with just to clarify, because the way that
Thank
up
you for
sounded a little
clarifying.
odd. Right. She was pregnant with our child. So we were kind of a dual income in Columbus, Ohio, and realized, when she's going through pregnancy and on the other side of it, like, not going to be able to make rent. Like, we're not going to be able to pay our bills with her not working. She had family up in Northeast Ohio, and I had just joined the organization. And I said, I know I've only been here like 6 months, but like, do you guys have anything in Northeast Ohio? They said, well, if you're willing to drive like an hour, like our headquarters is there, and you're really good with spreadsheets. Maybe you'd like this command center thing. And I said, I'll take it. Like, whatever I need to do. Did that commute for 6 years, I want to say.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was a lot of commute. That was the organization where I'm like, they didn't even call it WFM. They didn't call it workforce. I was in the command center, and we
hmm.
were an outbound dialing organization. So the difference was, instead of waiting for it to come in, we had big buckets of work that needed to get done. And how are we going to get it done? And when are we going to get it done? How can we get it done efficiently? So it's the same kind of process and
Yeah.
math, but ultimately, that is the reason why. And so I always know, how long have I been in workforce management is how old is my kid. She is 18 years old. I joined WFM, I think, February, and she was born in May. So I guess I'm coming up on close to 19 years now. And
Oh my gosh.
it started with spreadsheets, but honestly, I have stayed exactly the reason why Arlyne was talking about it. What I love is, one, one of the primary reasons people leave an organization is because of schedules, right? Like, we can't
Yep.
align it to our lives. And so workforce management typically isn't just creating a schedule, we're also managing it. Can they come in early? Can they leave late? Can they have PTO off? We're typically managing that. From my perspective, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but workforce management has one of the biggest impacts on communities than any team in an organization. We're typically the ones that are going to decide whether parents get to go to recitals, whether aunts get to go to funerals, whether people get off to be able to experience important holidays with their family units, to be able to volunteer in their communities. And I know it's maybe I'm over exaggerating it, and maybe they'll
Oh, you're
figure
not.
it out. From my perspective, the ripple effect that Arlyne was talking about, it's not just the internal kind of agents are being impacted, not just the customers that are being impacted. From my perspective, we're impacting communities, we're impacting people's ability to have meaningful lives outside of work, because we're able to adjust to demand and get creative and flexible. Small organizations, it's harder, but large organizations, we can make a lot of wheeling and dealing. We can make a lot of negotiations so that people can adjust and be where they want to be, which oftentimes isn't work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is making me so excited for the rest of this series because this was just the foundational stuff for so that I could actually contribute slightly to this conversation instead of just reading things off of a Google Doc. What's to come is going to be incredible. And Dan, I mean, I connected with you at ICMI and your thoughts behind psychological safety and how that plays such a huge role in this WFM space. And like you said, the community itself is what we're going to be looking into more in the next episode, where we're looking at why does this matter? What are cost savings? What are consistent experiences for the customer, for the agent, but then also going back to that human ripple effect. What is going on here and what control do you have and how can you leverage it? And then we'll be looking at what does good look like, which I think is something that like being someone that scales teams or builds foundations with teams, I've always like locked in on, it doesn't really matter what type of company, like what they actually are doing. I know what good looks like and I can produce that and scale that. And I'm excited to know what good looks like within the WFM space and also what good looks like in terms of how you connect with the rest of an organization. And then that ties us into the last piece of the series, how you're a strategic partner. And all of these are things that it took so much willpower for me to not go down these rabbit holes today because I am so excited to talk about them. These are the toolkit pieces that really educate people that are in the CX space on what WFM is, but also the roundtable has had such a cool opportunity to bring in VPs of product, CEOs, founders, and having a part of this conversation at the roundtable, this very important piece for a company to scale, but also to align with their values and to be the type of company that they're proud of. And thinking about that from a foundational level, when you are starting to scale or when you do get to 100 total employees, how does that leverage in there? And what you both touched on too about how it's not just working with managing schedules for agents, it's also project management, it's also time management for all of these different places. Like, this is our capacity, how do we meet in the middle here? This is a role that has serious legs, and I'm excited to find out too what the future of WFM looks like for both of you, because it's an exciting time of technology. It's also a scary time of technology, and there's a lot of blind trust happening. And you can't really blindly trust AI in any capacity, but I would think especially in this capacity because you hallucinate on something as important as staffing, and that's a ripple effect that you weren't hoping to have. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I did want to just ask you both from a foundational space, Arlyne, is there anything else that you really want to make sure that we chat about in today's conversation?
For me, it's the part of the communication. If we have that into consideration, building a WFM in any organization, like if we don't shut down our ears for hearing what marketing, finance, or other areas or HR recruitment has to say, we can have or make this a success for everybody, not just WFM, our agents, our support lines, like to everybody.
Love that. I'm so glad that you shared that. What about you, Dan?
I'm the same way. I've been chomping at the bit to go down different paths. I'm like, no, that's another conversation.
Soon.
I'll maybe just tee up the next conversation. We're talking about the foundations, and we talked a lot about what a lot of times doesn't matter unless we have a strong why. Why does
Yes.
WFM even exist? Why do we think we can impact X, Y, or Z things? Honestly, that's the conversation I'm excited to have. I think that's the foundational piece that we didn't talk about, but it's the next one. So I'll hold my tongue. I think we hit on what we needed to hit on for this particular conversation.
I'm so glad. Thank you two so freaking much for coming on this journey with me, for being open to hanging out with me for multiple hours, and for educating this community about how important this space is. And I'm just really lucky to know you. So thank you both so very much.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Yes,
Great conversation.
love it.
Yay. Well, I'll see you very soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks.